All right, man. I heard Time Business talking about this about whether PBC underreported the Spence and Crawford pay-per-view buys, and I never really thought about it till he said something about it. But he made a good point, saying that a lot of people was interested in this fight and it had a lot of buzz. But one of the reasons that I maybe say they probably it might have been accurate and did lower than what it did is because Dana White and UFC had a card going the same night, which I didn't understand that. Out of all the dates, I mean, they easily, I don't know about the logistics of it or, um, venues and what's available, but one of them dudes could have easily put that fight on August 5th and gave us something else to watch other than Jake Paul. This is why boxing can never win. And, this is why, UFC could be even bigger. They continue to compete with each other, which it don't make no sense. It don't make no sense. It makes zero sense. It makes zero sense that they continue to compete with each other. And that's one of the reasons that I believe the pay-per-view, is probably what it was. Around 700,000. Because you went up against the UFC. But I didn't hear anybody talking about the UFC on the internet on Saturday. I didn't hear anybody talking about it. I mean, you had every celebrity, and ain't nobody really going to Salt Lake neither. Let's call a spade a spade. Ain't nobody going to Salt Lake. That's where they had the fight with the UFC Gatly and Poirier 2 at. It was in Salt Lake. Ain't nobody going to Salt Lake. But nonetheless, wasn't nobody going there. But it just felt like you just heard a lot of people, talking about that fight. I mean, Nick Cannon came to the fight. At least he was at Bud After Party at Top Golf. I mean, you had Andre 3000 that came out, Cardi B came out, Chris Brown came out, I mean, all the celebrities was at the fight. All the celebrities was at the fight. And people say, well, what would be the agenda of, even though they don't officially report pay-per-views, but what will be their agenda on reporting a low pay-per-view number? Maybe to discourage Errol Spence from taking the rematch. Honestly, financially, how do you sell how do you sell this rematch? I mean, obviously you changed the weight and said, well, Earl was weight drained or Earl had an injury, but then again, he got to live up to that in the rematch. He got to live up to that in the rematch. You know, you got to ask yourself, can he live up? I mean, at the end of the day, once they got your money, they got your money. Because he get beat like that again, he probably gonna retire. Let's call it what it is. He get beat like that again, he probably gonna walk away from the sport. And people say, can he do any better in Rematch? Absolutely. Why wouldn't he do any better in a rematch? He ain't got no way but to go but up like that Richard Pryor movie. He ain't got no go. He ain't got no way to go but up. But I guess the agenda would be to report lower numbers is to deter Errol Spence from taking a rematch because they didn't want to do the fight anyway. That's the only reason I could think is to deter them or not pay them as much money. To say report low numbers, so they won't have to pay them as much money. Because you remember what Tim Bradley said. Tim Bradley said they just tell them what the numbers are. They just go by what the promoter said the numbers were. So you already know they telling them less numbers that happen, so they can keep more money in their pockets and keep the payouts at a minimum. You can't trust the promoter, so you ain't even getting the actual statement from the network and the cable companies. You going on just like they throw numbers out there because he did an interview with Coach Malachi. Just like they go out there and tell us what it was, like they be like, well, we think it did 700,000, 650, whatever. They go through the same thing. They go through the exact same thing where they be like, well, he said they just tell them what the numbers they did. It ain't no paperwork that proves shit. It ain't no paperwork. They just tell them just like they tell us. They tell them what the pay-per-view did. And that's how they get their payout based off that. So it ain't no, I get a statement from DirecTV or Dish Network and Xfinity and Spectrum and all that stuff. It's not that. It's not that. It's not that. So he basically said just like they tell us a number, they tell them a number. You know, but I could see that being the case. I can definitely see that being the case. You know, where they lie about the numbers and try to discourage him from doing it again. But I mean, how do you sell this fight again? And how you sell it is with excuses in a new way. And Bud get to prove that it wasn't a fluke. You know, that this wasn't a fluke. This was real. So his motivation is to show people this wasn't a fluke and to be able to, basically, duplicate what he did or maybe even build on what he did. But I just think the numbers missed a million. I didn't even know UFC had an event on Saturday. And that took away a lot of buys. I say it took away 300, 400,000 buys. But I really heard nobody talking about the UFC fight. But I'm not in the huge UFC circle neither. But they did have it on the wall playing in the closed circuit. So could they have underreported it to discourage Errol Spence from taking a rematch? I mean, shit, they could have, but I just think the numbers were what they were. Just to be quite honest, I just think the UFC had a huge impact on that, and maybe the next time they do it again, that means they got to be even bigger. They got to be even better at their promotion, and and obviously you probably looking at January or February because he needs some time. He needs some time to get his head clear, and obviously at this point, a coaching change is out of the question. In my opinion, a coaching change is out of the question. That's too quick a turnaround for any new coach to come in and do something. He got to heal up, and like I said before, if Earl Spence is not disciplined, if Earl Spence is not disciplined, during fight camp, you damn know sure maybe this loss get him on track, but you damn sure no he ain't disciplined when it comes to he ain't disciplined when it comes, to being outside of fight camp, especially when he about to get the biggest check he ever got before. So think about that for a minute. He about to get the biggest check he ever got before. So he not about to be disciplined in between fights. So maybe that loss humbled him a little bit and get him back on track. It might. It might. But I just think the numbers were what they were. The numbers were what they were because the UFC. I think because the UFC. And I think that's the biggest takeaway. I don't know why the UFC and boxing chose the same date. Out of all the dates, we got bullshit going on. To me, it just didn't make no sense. It made no sense. But hey, thumbs up the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel. Next subscribe button is the bell icon button. Hit all notifications, increase your chance to get notifications. We go live or drop video financially. Want to support the channel? Cash App $ CJ Good 313, Venmo CJ Good 313, PayPal link in the description. Hit the link tree. Find me on Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, Anchor, Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, the whole nine. Appreciate the love, support. Let me know what you girls and guys think in the comment section. Um, Hit the link tree. Find me on Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, Anchor, Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, the whole nine. Appreciate the love, support. Peace.